So for anybody that knows you, and for those of you who don't, you are a very prominent finger drummer. So tell us a little bit about like just live performance and finger drumming and what brought you into that in the first place.
I first got into finger drumming around 2015, 2016. I bought a machine in 2015, and I had pad controllers before that. So I think I had the first generation launch pad. But I never learned how to finger drum on it, and I don't think it wasn't like touch sensitive. It was kind of like more clicky, the pads, I think, on the first gen.
Yeah.
So I used to just use it to like trigger stuff in Ableton, like scenes and clip launchers and stuff like that. And then I saw a couple of videos online of finger drummers. So I think the first person I saw was actually Jeremy Ellis. He's OG finger drummer, and of course Arab music as well. And then I think I'd seen a couple of videos of like Beats by Jay Black and Odd Kid Out. And it looked really cool. I really wanted to try it. I kind of wanted to pivot from just being a bedroom producer to being more of a live performer and doing live shows and stuff. Because I think I'd seen a couple of producers live who were also maybe not necessarily like finger drumming properly, but like kind of, playing beats a little bit on pad controllers. Like Lapalux was one of them. And I think there was a guy called Anchor or something like that. Yeah. So when I got a machine secondhand off eBay, my intention was to start learning how to finger drum with it. But I did that thing where you buy new gear and then the learning curve just seems way too steep. So it just sat in my studio for a year, pretty much untouched. And it was only in 2016 that I kind of got it out and started to really learn how to use it properly and learn finger drumming and spend a lot of time learning it. I had a lot of stuff happen in 2016. It was like like a quite intense year, a series of unfortunate events. So I was in quite like a bad place that year, and I feel like finger drumming was almost my escape from it. It really helped me to I guess get out of my head and focus on something different, and I kind of channeled a lot of energy into that. It was kind of like meditation for me. And so coming out of that in 2017, I'd been posting stuff online and started to build a following from that, and then it kind of just took over. It was one of those things where I started it with a different intention to what it ended up. I never dreamed that it would become my career being a finger drummer. But it has, and I really love it, and I really encourage anyone to try it.
Yeah. So two things, I guess. One is it's really interesting and surprising to me that you bought it and then it sat in your place for like a year before you really kind of started getting into it. So I'm kind of curious about what was the impetus and what that shift was. And then the second piece around it would be around like what made you want to start sharing it, or at what point did you feel ready to share it? Were you sharing it before you were ready, etc.?
Yeah, I started sharing videos online before I was any good at doing anything. It wasn't to. I feel like social media is very different today than it was. Even then in 2016, it was very different. Even just the quality of videos that you could upload then was totally different, because everyone's got these amazing phones now which have incredible cameras on them. Before, when I was using my iPhone like 6 or 7 or something, all the videos are like super grainy, like really dark. I didn't have things like lighting or anything like that. I didn't even used to show my face on camera for like a year or two before I felt confident enough to do that.
Huh.
And a lot of the videos that I used to post were just literally just practice videos. It wasn't like creating a piece and finishing it and then filming the performance and posting something that's like super high quality. It was just me practicing something and then filming it to try and remember what it was, and then uploading it as like a log of videos that I can review. But yeah, social media was a very different place back then when, I first started pasting stuff.
Interesting. At what point were you like, huh, maybe this will be something that I'm going to turn into something that's more of a career?
I think it was probably when I started to collaborate with brands. And I think when I got to that first like 10K followers on Instagram, and then yeah, I was working with like Native Instruments quite early on, and I'd gone down to the head office to work with them on stuff, and I think it was at that point that I was like, I might actually be able to do something with this.
Yeah, that's so cool. For somebody who's interested in learning finger drumming, because I think there's a lot of producers that have a machine or like a push or some sort of pad controller, and maybe they use it to tap things in or program, but maybe they don't use it in a performance kind of way. So what are ways, especially because you're somebody who's, has a lot of experience teaching and creating educational content, what are some of those places to start or ways that you think about approaching it for somebody who's interested in learning finger drumming specifically?
Well, I have a new course that dropped earlier this year with Domestica, which is Introduction to Finger Drumming with Machine. That's great if you're a beginner because it kind of takes you step by step through how to set it up, how to, get your samples chopped and ready, and basic finger drumming exercises that you can do. So obviously it's a machine course, so setting up and everything's on machine. But say if you've got an MPC or a different controller, you can still follow the course as long as you know how to set up your samples and stuff. Like the exercises, you can translate to any pad controller really. But if you were looking for some more coaching or one-to-one lessons and stuff, I do that as well on my Patreon page. So you can come and do, in half an hour or 1 hour lesson with me. And I can, really show you. I feel like that's maybe the best way to learn because it's kind of like, if you're learning another instrument, say like piano or guitar or whatever, I think having an actual teacher that you do sessions with can really help you because there's certain things that, an individual will do with technique that you won't really get instructed on in a video. Whereas if you have a teacher or a coach or something, then you can really have those lessons tailored to you. And I find that's maybe the easiest way to improve quickly as well. So, the students that I do one-to-one lessons with, everyone learns at different pace. Everyone learns at a different pace, obviously, but I find my one-to-one sessions are where I see people learn really, really quickly because it's a lot easier for me to show you how to do something, and then if you get something wrong, I can correct you quite quickly, and then progressing on to more difficult patterns and advanced stuff.
Yeah, what are those common things that you see students maybe approach with a way that's maybe not helpful?
Most of the time, I think it's technique. If you've never really played any other instruments before, there are certain things about technique that you won't really know. So a lot of the technique that I use for finger drumming, I've translated from other instruments. So I learned piano as a kid. I'm classically trained, and a lot of that kind of technique, like hand posture, the way you hit the pads, timing, things like that, things that I've translated from playing piano to finger drumming.
Very cool. How much piano are you still playing?
I'm kind of off and on with it, really. So, like, I still play. I was doing lessons again for a bit last year because I really wanted to learn some more jazz stuff. But this year I bought an electric drum kit, so that's taken over for me at the moment with instrumentation.
That's really cool. So now you're playing like an actual kit. How do you feel like, does that make you, I don't know, I'm curious about how that impacts your finger drumming. Does it make you less interested in finger drumming? Do you feel like it just brings a new perspective to it? What is like the nature between those two things?
Yeah, I think it definitely brings a new perspective to it because there's certain patterns that I'm learning on a drum kit which I hadn't, known before. And so now I'm trying to translate some of those beats that I'm learning on a kit to how I can play them in a finger drumming setting.
Does it make you like, are you like, oh, I'm going to set up pads differently now in the way that you arrange things? Or you're like, no, the arrangement is fine the way that they are. And I just am going to learn how to kind of adapt these patterns.
Yeah, I think that the layout for me stays the same most of the time because you develop muscle memory, right? So like there are certain instances where I might have a different layout depending on what the pattern is, but it's kind of just about how I can play that that drumming pattern with my fingers rather than with my four limbs.
Yeah, very cool. So let's talk a little bit about motivation. Because you mentioned to me before, kind of beat challenges have been a really great way to kind of commit to a deadline and to just like kind of force yourself through the process. And can you speak a little bit more on that?
So when I first started posting videos online, obviously there were a lot of practice videos and stuff, and then I started seeing this thing that people were doing called January. There's also Beattober, which is pretty much the same thing, right? So it's a 30-day beat challenge where every single day you create something new, you finish it, and then you upload it. So it doesn't have to be finger drumming, right? Like it could be anything, like any beat video or even just a beat that you upload on SoundCloud. The idea is that you just stick to the 30 days. So it's kind of forming that habit. And I started doing that every January and I did it for 5 years. I haven't done it in a couple of years now, but I did it for 5 years in a row every January doing a 30-day beat challenge. And I feel like it really, really helped me to understand workflow and being able to create every day and sticking to deadlines, as well as just not being a perfectionist about your ideas. So having an idea and just kind of getting it to a point where it's good enough and being confident enough to just put that out. So that's kind of going back to that point I was talking about earlier about having a project and being able to translate different parts of it and stuff. Because it is kind of like storytelling with beats, isn't it? With music. So yeah, I really recommend doing 30-day beat challenge.
Right on. So yeah, what have you created anything like that that's maybe less like public facing, like in your own kind of development that's helped you like develop any particular thing that you're working on, whether it's finger drumming or other aspects of production?
You mean like another way of doing a challenge or something?
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe it's not a challenge per se, right? But maybe there's a way that you structure things that you do or habits that you have that contribute to the development of something that you're focused on at the time.
Yeah, I have calendars and lists. I have a lot of them because deadlines and just completing stuff is something that I've always struggled with ever since I was at school. Like I was just I was that person who just like never did their homework, never finished anything. And so I've had to kind of put in place certain strategies to help me be able to meet deadlines and stuff, especially if I'm doing brand partnerships or I have certain tracks and demos that need to be submitted by a certain date. I have like a whiteboard in my studio where it's like literally just there. So if I look over from my desk, it's just to the right. And every month I write in all the stuff. And so I can like cross things out and color code it. So, things in red are things that have to be done by this time, as well as my phone calendar. And I've got reminder lists and loads of like notes in my note app and stuff like that. I have to do that because if I don't, then
Yeah.
I just would never get anything done.
Also, it sounds like it gets pretty granular. So you think about like when you wake up on a particular day, you know that like these are the things that I would like to do today.
Yeah. I kind of do, I guess, time blocking because I also kind of try and focus on maybe just one main task per day. Sometimes I might have to like switch between different tasks because I find it quite hard to like just focus on one thing. So I might have like 3 different projects that I'll kind of flip between on that day. But generally, I kind of try and finish like one task a day.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I think this is really cool and interesting because I think, at least I know for me myself, right? I've experienced that piece where like I've gotten to a place where I've come to understand for myself that one substantial like creative task at least is a lot in one day, you know? And I think when I was
Yeah.
first starting, my expectation was often like, I'll do 3, you know, or maybe even more. And I think I've just come to learn that that's just not really, you may be able to do that one day, but the likelihood that you can maintain that several days in a row, weeks in a row, et cetera, it's really low in my experience.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. So did you have a similar experience to that, or did you just kind of know like one is enough?
No, totally that as well. Like sometimes I plan to do more than one thing a day. And like you said, like, you know, I might be able to do it as one off, but trying to do that consistently is actually really difficult. Because even though it's just creative work and like maybe I'm just sitting at a desk at my computer or whatever, it's still exhausting. Like there's only so much kind of creativity that you can pull out of yourself in a day. So I think it's quite important not to try and force it too much because you just end up burnt out.
Yeah. So how do you balance that, right? Because like in some of these scenarios that we're talking about, like with brand partnerships, for instance, and there are hard deadlines, and there's also that sense of I can you can block the time to work on it, you know, and make sure that you do that on a daily basis, but you don't necessarily get to choose the amount of progress that comes out of that session. So how do you balance that? You know, like understanding that like I can't force this creativity, but also there are real deadlines in order to maintain.
I mean, if there's a deadline and I just have to get something done, even if I don't feel like it, I think once you sit down and you start working on something, a lot of the time, like you'll be able to come up with something good. But I've learned to appreciate my downtime because, especially as a freelancer, you kind of don't really know when the work's going to come in. And a lot of the time, you just end up with loads of projects all at once. And then you end up having to do a crazy amount of stuff in a really short amount of time. And then you'll just have like a week where you don't have anything. And before I used to, I don't know, I guess feel guilty if I wasn't just constantly working on something. So, like, for example, like this January, earlier this year, um, I really didn't have much work in, and I think that's just generally that time of year is quite quiet anyway. At the start of the new year and stuff, and so um, I was just like making projects for myself to do, and so I was like, doing loads of stuff, and then by the time like end of February, March came around, I had loads of projects that came in, and then I was just working non-stop and I hadn't enjoyed that January to just have some downtime and chill. And so I've learned to kind of just appreciate when I have like a week where I don't really have anything in to just take some time to like chill and step back.
Yeah, so it sounds like maybe there's this sense of like you need to be busy, you know, but also learning with experience that having some space is like a really important part of being able to do what you do well.
Yeah. Yeah. You definitely need like that time to step back and chill because I don't know, being creative is quite mentally taxing and like making music as well. Like it can be quite draining. And so if you're just like constantly pushing, it can definitely lead to burnout, I think. And I think that's something you just have to be really aware of, especially as a creative. It's just not just taking that time to like do the self care.
Yeah. So what does self-care look like for you?
A lot of the time, it's just like rotting on the sofa, playing PlayStation, and watching anime.
For the other anime fans listening, what are you watching?
Currently, I'm on a little break from watching stuff
Mm.
because I had just finished like a bunch of new anime, and it was the end of My Hero, like the season 7 or whatever. I think I was watching My Story Wand and Sword. What else was there? JJK. I was just watching a lot of different anime, and then so now I'm just taking a little bit of a break from it.
Right on.
I kind of want to rewatch Naruto though, but I just know how much of a it's like 700 episodes. But I've just because I rewatched Hunter x Hunter recently as well.
700. Wow.
Do you watch any anime?
No, man. When I was younger, I used to watch like, when I was a kid, I watched Dragon Ball Z all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, since then, no, not really. But I know that like a lot of heads in the community are big fans. So while you're on here and mentioning it, I want to share it for them just in case. What does consistency mean to you?
Consistency is just keeping going with stuff, really. Like, it's just making sure you're, I guess, always holding yourself accountable and like putting stuff out. So I find it's quite easy to, I guess, make stuff or like post or, whatever it is, work on a project. And then if you take like a long gap after that, it's quite hard to get back into it. So consistency is just making sure you're like always working on something.
How many sessions do you usually like sit down and make a beat from start to finish in one session?
Depends.
How many days a week are you usually in the studio working on music?
I'd say probably 4 or 5 days a week.
What does your process usually look like? Do you start with the drums and you perform them as you're making a beat? Or do you click them in? Are you programming? How do you typically going about making a beat?
It depends really because I kind of split finger drumming and production as like two different things. So with finger drumming, if I'm creating a routine, a lot of the time it'll start with me just finding a cool sample that I want to work with. And then just chopping that up, putting the drums in, and I'll jam with it all together, all the parts together. If I'm producing, that's kind of like a little bit of a different process for me. So sometimes I might sit at the piano and like figure out something or like get a guitar if there's like a certain chord progression I'm working on or whatever. Generally, with producing, I'd always start with the chord progression and then kind of build the track out from there.
Very cool. So one thing I wanted to come back to is you would kind of in this idea of, at least for me, I think like when you think about trying to overload a day with like how many things you need to do versus kind of accepting that like, okay, being able to like consistently do one really significant, creative project or task a day is sort of this, to me, it speaks to like this underlying realization that like, okay, like I'm playing a much longer game, right? Like I'm not like sprinting to a finish line. And so I'm wondering like if you can speak to like how you think about longevity.
I think longevity is like a really important part of trying to build a career in making music, or even if it's just a hobby, like there's like a real focus on things going viral on the internet, I think. And if that's something you're aiming for, go for it. There's a lot of people that play the game very well, if that's something you want to do. But as a creative, I don't know if that's really sustainable because then you just get really focused on numbers and stuff like that, or just like creating the next new bit of viral content, and you kind of lose the essence of making that music and making something you really care about. And so for me, that's what longevity is like building on something that you really love. Like you have to really love what you're making and love what you're doing to be able to be consistent and continue to make that for the rest of your life, right? Like if you go to work, whatever your job is, if you've got a normal day job and you hate your job, like it's really difficult to go every day. And it's kind of the same with making music, right? Like if you're just making something for a certain intention, then I think it can become really difficult and you can maybe become a bit jaded about what you're making, and maybe you start looking at the numbers too much and you don't like what you're seeing. It's very easy to give up. But if you love what you do and you do what you love, I think that's, how you can keep doing that for the rest of your life.
Yeah, how do you, I guess, remain connected to like your underlying purpose and like what really matters to you creatively and artistically, understanding that at the same time, like you're sharing videos and parts of songs in the context of like social media, where numbers play a large part in what's happening around it.
I think I just try not to think about it too much.
Mm.
I think it's very easy to get lost in, that looking at numbers or comments, negative comments and stuff like that. But I kind of try to not really think about it too much. And it's what I tell people a lot of the time, whenever I'm doing mentoring sessions, people ask about social media. I'm just like, don't overthink it. Like,
Mm.
just, make something you really like. That's what my finger drumming videos are. I found a really cool sample that I really like, and then I've made a really cool jam out of it, and then I've posted it. I think people resonate with that. Like if you like what you're making and you're posting something that you really like, then a lot of the time people who share that common interest are going to like what you make as well. But I think that shouldn't be the focus. Like just all the beats that I make are beats that I really love. Like that's why I don't sell beats, is because a little bit of my soul has gone into every single one of those beats. So I'm not trying to make a quick buck off it. Like I'm just making stuff that I really love.
That's a really cool kind of part to note there. I think that given like there's a market for you to just sell these beats, and you're just very intentional and about how you choose to make money from what it is that you do. Where do you think that comes from?
Um, I don't know really. I kind of always felt that way about it. Like I made a BeatStars account years ago, and I think I uploaded like 3 tracks onto it. And then literally the next day I took them all off because I was like, this just doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Like I don't want to sell my beats to like just some random person on the internet. Like I want to create this track. I want it to still have my name on it. Like I want to be able to work with artists that I want to work with and retain control on the music that I make.
Yeah, very cool. And so I want to touch back onto the virality piece that you mentioned. I guess it's like, you're somebody who has had very respectable success on social media and had and experienced those moments of virality. So it's like for the people out there, like to your point, who are thinking like, oh, I need something to go viral. Like that is the thing that will create success for me. Can you kind of, having experienced some of that, speak to that and kind of just like add another perspective to people thinking that that's what they need to take the next step in their career or in their development?
I think social media can be a really great tool, especially for marketing your work and getting yourself out there and, getting the right people to see what you do. Um, Obviously, numbers can play a part in that because, the more people that see your work, the more likely you are to get brand partnerships or get hit up by someone that wants to buy your beats or whatever. I think social media can be a really great tool. And the way that I use it is I just see it as a portfolio of my work. So I just, upload stuff onto it with the intention of it representing me as a producer, as a performer. But I don't focus on trying to get a viral piece of content. Personally, I would say I haven't actually had any viral numbers. Like, I've had videos that get 100K. I think the most that I've got this year is a video that I was talking about someone stole one of my beats, and I think that funny
I
enough
remember
ended up
that.
being my
Yeah.
most watched video this year, which was like 300,000 views or whatever. But I don't think that's viral. Like viral to me is like a million plus on a video. Um, yeah, I don't know. I just don't think going viral is a sustainable way to build on something, because you might have a post go super viral, you get 5 million hits on it or whatever, and you get, I don't know, 10,000 followers off the back of that. That can be amazing, right? Like you suddenly have this huge audience, but does that mean that audiences are actually necessarily going to engage in any of your future work? Like, do they actually care about what you're doing? Because, I have seen people that have a viral post or two and have, gained a lot of followers off the back of it, but then any posts after have not necessarily done as well. And so for me, what's more important than just getting loads of followers and loads of views is building a community of people that actually care about what I'm doing, about me as an artist, that support what I do and are always going to be engaged. And I would much rather have 500 people that are super engaged and, my tight knit community of people that really care about me as an artist than to have 100,000 followers, that follow me off the back of a one hit viral video.
All right, that's it for part 1 of our conversation with Gnarly, where we covered everything from her introduction to finger drumming to building confidence through practice and performance. Be sure to check out part 2, where we dive into quality over quantity when it comes to audience building, gaining confidence through achieving goals, and the importance of flexibility. If you enjoyed this episode of Producer Head, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave a rating and review wherever you're listening. This helps Producer Head find its people, and without you, there is no Producer Head. Thanks again for listening to this episode of Producer Head. Don't forget to head over to torubeat.substack.com and subscribe so you never miss an episode, along with some great extras like episode transcripts and access to the bi-weekly podium, a curation of my 3 favorite discoveries from on and offline over the past week. It's a 2-minute read providing you with a personal soundtrack, ideas, and inspiration you can use immediately. I promise you won't want to miss this. Join the community of producers receiving personally curated music, ideas, and inspiration to develop their craft. Subscribe at torubeat.substack.com. This episode was co-produced, engineered, and edited by Matthew Diaz. From Producer Head, this has been Toru, and in a way, so were you. Peace.